Welcome to The Hypnotist, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. Brought to you by the hypnotherapist demanded by celebrities, CEOs, and even royalty, Adam Cox. These recordings took place live from Adam's clinic in London's world-famous Harley Street. This podcast features powerful hypnosis, so do not listen while driving or operating machinery. This recording is not suitable for those with epilepsy or severe mental health issues. So, get yourself comfortable and enjoy today's episode of The Hypnotist.
Hi, it's Adam here, and in this episode of The Hypnotist, you're going to be listening to a hypnosis session designed for anger and losing control. And I was working with a client that grew up in a household where there was a parental figure, a father, that would quite often be volatile, quite often lose their temper. And as a child observing this, this client at some level picked up that, there are some advantages of doing that. Maybe he saw his father get his own way or maintain control or avoid dealing with difficult conversations. So what you're going to hear in this hypnosis session is an element of changing how he perceived that, rather than it being advantageous to lose your temper, actually seeing that losing your temper means that you're losing control and losing power of the situation. And to use the metaphor, the analogy of the control room of the mind, so that he was able to look at anger as something that was justified in very rare situations, but not useful in most situations. And using almost like a industrial age metaphor of steam and hydraulics, a furnace glowing, and that his evaluations, his thoughts were the fuel of that kind of fire of anger, and that a certain amount of that could enable him to be more assertive and to influence other people, but without getting to that red zone. So if you think of a lot of pressure gauges, they've got a green, an amber, and a red kind of section, or sometimes just a red section as a warning if the pressure gets so high. So in this hypnosis session, we're planting the seed of an idea that there are certain circumstances that rage or losing control element of anger is actually useful, but probably not in the majority of cases. And that quite often what this client was losing his temper about was not intentional. It was mistakes. And that's going to feel very harsh and unsafe for people experiencing anger as a result of a mistake. It's very different if you receive anger as a result of something intentional, because then it feels at least there's a reasonable element. If someone tries to assault you or steal something from you, and that's a malicious action, then rage quite often is justified. But if an accident happens and someone does something unintentionally and what they experience is rage or anger, that can feel very harsh and unsafe. So if you're listening to this and you feel that you can relate to this idea of losing your temper, losing control, there will be a link in the show notes to schedule a free consultation call to explore working with me directly. But you might find that this session, although it was created for someone else, could actually be quite useful for you, in which case the ideal time to listen to this is in a place where you won't be disturbed, in a place where you can be free of distractions, that you can relax, and when the time is right to enjoy the session. Take a deep breath in. And as you breathe in, just imagine breathing in a resourceful feeling of relaxation. And as you exhale, just allow your eyelids to close. And as they close, notice that you can give more of your attention to the sound of my voice. As you breathe in, just get a sense that you're breathing in useful things for you. Not just relaxation, but a sense of calm, tranquility, and peace. And as you exhale, just feel that you can let go of any frustrations, any baggage that you've been holding on to, any irks and annoyances that have been niggling away. Just feel like that's leaving you on your outward breath. I want you to get a sense that as you breathe in, you notice where in your body there's clues of tension. Maybe it's in your jaw, your neck, your shoulders, around your eyelids. But as you breathe in that feeling of calmness, just decide that it's okay to let any tension go. And as you breathe out, just imagine it melting away and then leaving your body, almost like vapor, leaving your body, no longer there, giving you the ability to really feel deeper and deeper relaxed. That's right. I want you to use the power of your imagination to imagine a staircase that leads down into a corridor. Maybe it's a wooden staircase, maybe a concrete staircase, maybe luxurious like marble. I'm going to count down from 10 to 1, and with each descending number, you will imagine walking down that staircase. And with each descending number, feeling like you're going deeper and deeper relaxed, but also traveling towards a part of your unconscious mind where emotions get regulated. 10, just taking that step down the staircase, immediately feeling a release of tension. 9 and then 8, just feeling like relaxation is going in and tension is leaving your body. And then 7 and 6, just feeling like you're gliding, drifting towards a place of relaxation as you continue to walk down the staircase. That's it. 5 and then 4, feeling deeper and deeper relaxed. 3 and then 2. Arms feeling limp, light, loose. Legs feeling heavier. Feeling a desire to yawn. Eyelids heavier and heavier. That's it. 2 and then 1. Just imagine you're at the bottom of a staircase. And you're walking down that staircase and you can see a door that leads to a room. And I want you to imagine that this is a room that represents a control room of your mind. Imagine walking down the corridor, standing in front of a door. I will count down from 5 to 1. You will imagine opening that door, walking into the control room and closing the door behind you. But this control room will be almost like a control room of an industrial age, of valves and gauges, of steam power and hydraulics. But standing outside the door, starting to count 5, putting your hand on the handle, 4, twisting the handle, 3, opening the door, 2, walking through the door, and 1, closing the door behind you. And I want you to look around this industrial age control room. Maybe there's the smell of fuel that's being burnt. You can feel the heat maybe of a furnace. And I want you to see that furnace. Feel the warmth of the furnace on your skin. And accept that this fire represents the intensity of your emotion. That you need some fire there, otherwise nothing works. But if the fire loses control, it starts to cause damage. Damage to you, or damage to the equipment in this control room. And I want you to get a sense that there is something that feeds this furnace, it feeds this fire, and it's 2 things. Fuel, the wood, the coal, but also the oxygen. And I want you to get a sense that subconsciously you've been deciding what is fuel for your fire, but also how to amplify the intensity of a flower by fire by putting more oxygen on it. And I want you to get a sense that what if, way back when you were a child, you made an evaluation as to what is justifiable to allow a fire to lose control. I want you to think back maybe to a time maybe when you were maybe 4 or 5 years old, or maybe older, witnessing a parent, maybe a father, losing control. And back then, there might have been reasons. Maybe that reason was something that they asked to be done wasn't done. Maybe it was that they felt disrespected or not listened to. Maybe it's that they were in a bad mood and they just decided that they needed an outlet for all of that pent-up pressure. But just imagine as a child, you could have evaluated that raising your voice gives you a sense of authority, that losing control helps you get what you want. Or maybe you observed other things or came to other conclusions. And I wonder what would have happened back then as a child if you made the incorrect evaluation that losing your temper gives you a sense of control. And there's certainly a few bits of evidence that would support that. When you raise your voice, people tend to listen. When you ask people to do things with a loud, aggressive voice, people are more likely to do that thing. But what if the evaluation you made back then as a child was exactly the opposite evaluation that would be helpful? What if you made the evaluation that losing your temper gives you control, when the real evaluation is that losing your temper means that you've lost control? I want you to think to a recent time where you lost your temper. Were you in control of the words that left your lips? Were you in control of the speed that your heart was beating? Were you in control of the tension you probably felt in your neck and your jaw? Were you in control of the dynamics and the impact it had on other people? Or was it the case that by losing your temper you lost control? If you make the evaluation that maybe all the way back then as a child, what you thought was a useful thing has actually been hindering your life, and that knowing what you now know, it would be useful to raise that threshold as to what it takes for you to lose your temper, to lose control. And if you feel like that might be helpful, just let me know by nodding your head. I want you to imagine you're back there in the control room. And I want you to imagine there is a gauge. Green, amber, and red. And you can see the pressure dial, maybe linked to the intensity of an emotion. And I want you to get a sense that when that little dial hits red, you are no longer in control of your words and in control of your decisions, at least until that dial hits amber again and then eventually goes back to green. And I wonder what would happen if we changed this dial so it required so much more fuel to ever get to that stage of losing control. I want you to imagine the circumstances that losing your temper is actually useful for you. Maybe it's that you've been physically harmed, or that the people that you love are threatened with physical harm. If you feel like that's a good threshold to lose your temper, let me know by nodding your head. Or maybe it's that something has been stolen from you, or is about to be stolen from you. And if that feels like maybe it's a useful threshold, just let me know by nodding your head. But I want you to imagine that someone making a mistake is certainly not a useful threshold to lose control. In fact, if you evaluate that someone could make a mistake or has made a mistake, the maximum that it can get to is that amber level. Maybe you raise your voice, but you're still in control of what you say. Maybe you're communicating in a more direct way, but you're aware of what you're saying and why you're saying it. It's deliberate. I want you to get a sense that in order for you to lose your temper, you need to make an evaluation that there is malicious harm or threat. And anything other than malicious harm or threat isn't sufficient trigger for you to lose your temper. There simply isn't enough fuel on the fire for it to get that intense. I want you to imagine someone making a mistake as maybe one log on the fire. You might raise it a bit, but it doesn't explode. Or if someone doesn't do what you've asked them to do, it might be a reason to be more direct with them, to have a conversation, or to ask questions. Nothing accusatory, but just exploring. And I want you to think of all those things in your life that in the past have triggered you to lose control, that in hindsight would have been much more useful for you to get to that amber level, but not quite red. And I want you to imagine that you're seeing yourself handle those situations where you're becoming more intense, your fire is starting to glow but not explode. And notice, you're getting the best of both worlds. You're able to communicate your point in a clear way where it's being listened, but you're not undermining yourself by losing the control. Sometimes people want people to lose control because it gives them permission to no longer take responsibility. I remember one time being told a story of an aggressive bouncer that would deliberately have insults, deliberately be rude, because they wanted to provoke a reaction. Because once that reaction was provoked, they were then justified in what would otherwise be unreasonable violence. And I want you to now perceive these things that triggered an extreme reaction to be a game, a trick. You're trying to be provoked into overreacting, but forewarned is forearmed. I want you to get a sense that there isn't sufficient fuel on the fire. And actually, I want you to imagine yourself in these situations where you lost control, seeing yourself, catching yourself, feeling the intensity of the fire growing, and then just smiling and deciding that it's not going to get that far. See yourself taking a big outward breath And it's almost like taking a log off the fire and it just dampens down. I want you to see that recent event where you lost your temper and see how you would have handled that if you made the evaluation that because it wasn't malicious, it can't possibly provoke you losing control. Maybe catch yourself smiling and maybe saying, what's done is done, let's talk about this later. It's intense, it's brief, but you're in control and there's no contagion. It doesn't go beyond the moment that's happened. And if you can start to imagine yourself in the past and the future handling situations with less intensity and more choice, that you take pride in being in control, let me know by nodding your head. I want you to imagine you're back in that control room, and I want you to imagine there is a dial for patience, and I want you to turn that dial up. There is a dial that represents understanding and empathy, and I want you to increase that dial. I want you to see there is a dial that represents curiosity. That when you feel that mistakes have been made, it starts to trigger a curiousness as to what's behind that mistake. How could it be fixed? How could it have been prevented? That the curiosity creates a desire for learning and exploration and investigation rather than criticism, attacks or insults. And I want you to get a sense that there are so many different tools in your toolbox, and that anger and frustration are just one or two of them, but have a specific job to be used. That if someone is malicious, trying to threaten you or the people that you love with negative intent, then it makes sense to use the tool of anger. Outside of that, there are so many other tools you can use: perspective, curiosity, analysis. They say that if the only tool in your toolbox is a hammer, then everything looks like a nail. And if your only option is anger, everything looks justified for anger. But once you know how to use all those other tools, why would you use the tool that is inappropriate for the job when there are so many other more effective tools available? I want you to unlock that part of your mind that now entertains there are so many other options available to you. And you will start thinking about past events with the question, knowing what I now know, how would I have handled that situation differently? And how would I do it differently in the future if the same situation occurred? Knowing that you are preparing your mind to use different tools in different environments, giving you more flexibility. I want you to tap hold of these resourceful thoughts, strategies, and emotions, unlock powerful positive resources within you, and then feel like it's time to leave that control room. But before you leave, just turn up the dial for positivity and optimism. Meaning you leave the room feeling very optimistic about the future and your ability to handle those things that may have triggered you in the past. You leave the room, see a corridor, walk down the corridor, see a staircase, start to walk up the staircase, and then feel like you're returning to the present, listening to my voice exactly where you are. Take a deep breath in through your nose and out through your nose. Just wiggle your fingers, wiggle your toes, all parts returning to the present in this moment, but with new ideas about what you could have done differently in the past and what you can do differently in the future. Having a sense that losing your temper is losing control, and you have a desire to be in control but use the right tool for the job. Starting to count to awaken you. 1, 2, 3, waking up. 4, 5, 6, more alert. 7, 8, open your eyes, open your eyes. 9, 10, wide awake, wide awake, wide awake.
Thank you for listening to The Hypnotist with Adam Cox, the show that gives you inside access to cutting-edge hypnosis with real clients facing genuine issues. To automatically receive the latest episodes, please subscribe. If you'd like to support the show, please share this episode with just one friend you think it could help. And if this episode helped you, please leave us a 5-star review.